So we'll move on to our biggest surprises, disappointments for this season, both from a team perspective and a player perspective. Again, this can be very brief. We're just going to touch on this quickly just to give us a bit of an idea of who we sort of maybe expected to be good and turned out to have really disappointing seasons, and also guys and teams that surprised us with their performance and something that we didn't really see coming. So I'll start with you, Marcus. Who are your biggest surprises?
So surprises, I've got Markel Fultz. Being a Markel fan, I guess, the resurgence of his career, it's been great to see. Although he's not killing it, averaging 25 and being that guy he was in college, I think it's a step in the right direction. He's averaging around 14, 5 and 6 with a steal and a half on efficient splits as well. So I really do think next season he can take another jump. And people are going to be saying very soon, maybe Markel can turn his career around and be that all-star player that people once expected him to be. Besides that, Bol Bol, it was great to see him, I guess, get that opportunity and show why he's ranked so highly amongst, I guess, NBA fandom, because there were a lot of question marks on him, and it was just good to see his versatility being showed on display. And then we have the Sacramento Kings being the third seed and ending that 16-year playoff drought, as well as Lauri Markkanen, who he's killed it. Some may even call him a superstar. I won't go that far, but I think if he backs it up next year, hey, why not? So those are my surprises. What are yours?
Yeah, I like him. I think I've got some pretty similar ones. I've got a couple of differences, but for the most part, they're all pretty smack bang on the money. So for me, I've got the Kings, first playoff appearance since 2006, third seed in the West. They secured the Pacific Division. The culture on that team has changed. I think just from where we expected them to be this season to where they are, it's just an incredible transformation. So they obviously surprised a lot of people, including myself. The Oklahoma City Thunder, obviously there were talks that they'd be tanking. Obviously with Chet out, not being able to see him this season, everyone just expected them to bow down and, take another losing season. But SGA emerges into a superstar, an all-NBA first-team caliber player, an MVP caliber guy. Jalen Williams' emergence in the second half of the season and Josh Giddey's jump in the second year helped them secure a play-in spot. And to be honest, it's been a big surprise and an incredible transformation considering that Chet hasn't even played. So that's just a scary sign for the Thunder, how good they can actually be. And the last team for me, we've got the Knicks, which was obviously a surprise because they missed out on Donovan Mitchell. There was question marks regarding Jalen Brunson, how his production would be, how productive he would be on the court. Those questions were answered. They've locked in a playoff spot after missing the season prior. Jalen Brunson ascended to this star caliber player, an all-NBA type of player, and that definitely helped the Knicks in the position that they are now, and that surprised me because I didn't see that kind of production from the Knicks this year. I thought they'd be middle of the road again. And then to add on to the players that surprised me, again, Jalen Brunson, no need to really go into detail about this, self-explanatory, went from 16.3 points per game to 24 points on really efficient splits, shooting 41% from three, nearly 50% from the field, 83% from the free-throw line, averaging 6 assists a game. Incredible. Mikal Bridges, second half of the year when he got traded, all NBA kind of numbers, which I touched on earlier. I think he's got that ability to really take his game to the next level next year, and I'd be excited to see how far he can progress and whether he can maintain his consistency going forward next year as well. Lauri Markkanen, who you mentioned, again, reaching that superstar caliber kind of performance. He's not quite there yet, but I think he's there or thereabouts, and the efficiency that he put forward, nearly shooting 50, 40, 90, averaging 25.6 points and nearly 9 rebounds a game. Incredible. SGA's jumped to superstardom, like I mentioned, helped them to the playing game. Played very incredibly this year, had 45 plus 30-point games in a season, and the only players over the last 20 years who have had those kind of numbers are LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, Kevin Durant, Allen Iverson, James Harden, and now obviously SGA. So it just shows his level of production and how incredible he's been this year. And I'm really excited to see him in that play-in and seeing how far he can take this OKC team.
Disappointments?
Yeah.
Alright, sweet. So my disappointments: Portland Trailblazers not making a move for Dame. Look, they're kind of in that middle phase. They're not competing for a championship. They're not in the playoffs, but they're just kind of under the play-in. But they're not they're not getting a top 4 pick either. So I think they're kind of in no man's land at the moment. And they do have a young core. I like Sharp and I like Simons, Reddish. I think there's a lot there. But at the end of the day, if you got a player like Dame, you want to kind of get someone to pair next to him and try compete for a championship, because the time's running out in Portland. And then I also have Miami Heat not making a move. I really think they're one move away from contending for a championship again. They didn't get Russ. They didn't really try anything to kind of contend, and I think they're kind of on the way down. And we've seen that because they're in the play-in, which is tough to see. But at the end of the day, if you're not making the moves and you kind of keep the same team around, it was kind of evident that was bound to happen. Ben Simmons is a disappointment this season. Many of us thought he would have a resurgence and be that All-NBA Ben we once knew and make a huge defensive impact and perhaps even start shooting some jump shots, but that never happened. And then the other two are the Atlanta Hawks. I think DeJounte and Trey, the pairing, didn't really work out there. It's not really what a lot of us expected it to be. And yeah, I think they took a step back this season. I don't think they're contenders, but they're in the playoffs, or the play-in. So it's going to be a tough off-season for them. They need to make some crucial decisions. And then the Dallas Mavericks, of course, how could I forget, not making the play-in. It's just terrible. Luka, hell has break loose with him. Kyrie played amazing, but they don't know if he's going to be back. So they're in a tough situation, and they let go of some important role players like Dorian Finney-Smith. So I don't really know what to think of them. But those are my disappointments.
Yeah, we've got some pretty similar ones. So for me, my disappointments, obviously, like you just touched on there, the Mavericks, Western Conference Finals in the previous year. Luka had a hot start to the season, was in MVP talks. Then they decided to trade the defensive identity in Dorian Finney-Smith and guys like that for Kyrie. We're hoping to get over the hump with that move. Obviously, that didn't turn out the way it did. Luka started to get this reputation as, maybe not the right person to play with, or it's hard to play with Luka. And so I think from where they were last year, making the Western Conference Finals, to where they ended up now, it's pretty disappointing. Who else? They got the Blazers. So they started 10-4, finished the season 23-44. From that point, they shut Dame down, wasted his career year. Sort of in the middle road, didn't make the play-in, weren't really bad enough to contend for a lottery pick, a high lottery pick, like a top 5 pick, or a top 3 or 4 pick, I should say. So I think that was a disappointment in that sense, where you didn't make the playoffs or the play-in, but you also didn't suck enough to get a really good pick in the draft this year. And I think this one's going to surprise a few people, but the Jazz, I think they knew they wanted to rebuild. They tried winning. It didn't make the play-in. Now they may have set themselves back, especially with the draft and the quality of players at the top end. So I think that might come back to bite them. They could have just decided to call it a season and just start tanking. But they won enough games where they didn't make the play-in, but didn't win enough to suck like the Blazers. So it's disappointing that they didn't really decide to have the identity either one way or another, you know what I mean? So in terms of players, I think it's a pretty obvious one for me. Rudy Gobert. This was even before the whole incident happened. I think you're paying him $38 million a year. He's certainly not been worth what the Timberwolves gave up to get him. Obviously touched on it before, what they gave up. His greater worries lie at the offensive end. in terms of their half-court attack, it's worlds better without Gobert, and they were absolutely dreadful in the stints he logged with Karl Anthony Towns. They averaged just 107.9 points per 100 possessions together. There's a trace of decline throughout his game. Opponents are shooting 57.5% against him at the rim. That's the worst of his career. And his defensive rebounding rate, while solid overall, is at its lowest since 2017-2018. His block rate is also at a personal rock bottom. So, not really much to say about Gobert. It's been disappointing, and the fact that, all of that came out right at the last game of the season, just before the play-in and the playoffs begun. It's probably not the best image for him, and I think his time is up. His time's numbered there, in my opinion. Ben Simmons, another guy you touched on. I think, again, we expected him to have this resurgence in his career and to prove people wrong and to start, showing people that the old Ben Simmons could definitely be well and truly around, but that never came into play, and I think that's a really disappointing aspect that, we never saw that jump, or we just sort of saw a Ben Simmons that felt like he didn't really care or didn't want to be out there on the court. So that was a disappointment. And this one might surprise a few people, but I've got Scotty Barnes as a disappointment. For people that know me, I rate Scotty Barnes highly. I actually had him as my most improved player prediction. So predicted him to win most improved player this year. Just saw how hard he worked in the offseason with his 3-point shooting, and I just expected him to make this jump and turn into a 20-point per game scorer this year and just add other facets to his game and have his playmaking really evolve, but that never came to play, and he just sort of stagnated and plateaued and had the same sort of numbers that he did in his rookie year, which I guess it might surprise people because he still had a productive rookie season, but I think from where people expected his trajectory to go, especially in year 2, it never really came to play. So